This show is not intended for the treatment or prevention of disease, nor as a substitute for medical treatment, nor as an alternative to medical advice. No part herein, nor any statement, act, nor omission made by Cormac Mannion or Amplitude LLC or its agents or affiliates are to be construed as treatment of any medical condition, medical advice, nor to delay necessary medical treatment. Scientific evidence is discussed for informational purposes only. No patient-doctor relationship is formed. Hey guys, Type-IIx here. This is the 18th episode of Gear Growth and Gains, brought to you by MesoRx, the leading platform for open and unfiltered discussion on enhanced bodybuilding. Members freely share experiences, hold sources accountable, and ensure transparency. No censorship, just real reviews. Visit MesoRx at www.thinksteroids.com/community and start posting. And if you want to subscribe to the Gear Growth and Gains newsletter, visit Type-IIx.substack.com to subscribe, or go to amplitude.com and click sign up for Type-IIx's newsletter. And don't forget to check out @Gear Growth Gains, one word, on Telegram. Are you looking to expand your knowledge on performance enhancement strategies? I'm excited to announce the Clenbuterol Handbook, your comprehensive guide to understanding this powerful compound. This meticulously researched ebook breaks down everything you need to know, from biological effects to protocol design and practical considerations. The best part? It's completely free for all my Substack subscribers. Just head over to typeiix.substack.com/subscribe to get your copy today. If you prefer a one-off purchase, stay tuned. The handbook will be available for sale soon on amplitude.com. Don't navigate this complex topic with incomplete information. Get the Clenbuterol Handbook and make informed decisions about your performance journey. Subscribe now at typeiix.substack.com/subscribe. Welcome to the Gear Growth and Gains podcast hosted by me, Type-IIx. In today's episode, we dive deep into the intersection of cutting-edge recovery techniques and advanced hormone optimization strategies. First, I had the privilege of speaking with Dr. Umar Nisar, the soft tissue clinician and chiropractor behind Nick Walker's elite recovery and injury management. We explore how targeted soft tissue work supports not just pain relief, but also long-term performance gains and injury prevention. Then we transition into the first podcast of the Advanced Biomarker series, where I'll continue breaking down how to read and interpret your blood work to optimize hormones safely and effectively. This is essential knowledge for anyone serious about enhancing their physique and performance while protecting their health. Whether you're looking to fine-tune your recovery protocols or want to understand the science behind hormone optimization, this episode offers practical insights to elevate your game. Stay tuned for the full interview and an in-depth guide to mastering your biomarkers. All right, let's get into it. Okay, so I am here today with Dr. Umar Nisar, who I would introduce as basically Nick Walker's soft tissue guy, but he can tell us a lot more about what he is, what he does. Dr. Nisar runs Asylum Sport Performance and Recovery in Voorhees, New Jersey, which I'm hopefully pronouncing correctly. Yep. But Dr. Nisar, why don't you tell us a little about yourself, your introduction here?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you reaching out and making this possible. I'm really excited to talk about some of the stuff that we have prepared and just to hopefully get out to a little bit more of the population that listens to the podcast. But I am a chiropractor by trade and license. I do practice very heavily in manual therapy. I've been doing this now for a handful of years, but 3 years since having Asylum Sports Performance and Recovery, which is located in Voorhees, New Jersey. I went to grad school in upstate New York, originally went to community college locally here in South Jersey and studied human biology, and then transferred over to Drexel University where I continued my undergrad in human bio. And then from there, I went on to grad school because I found my way to chiropractic. It wasn't that it was like so much life-changing. It was more so just that a chiropractor that I had met had set me on this new path just because of our relationship and conversation, not because of the philosophy of what chiropractic is, but more so just the way that he had communicated to me, which changed my view on the injury that I had at the time, and then put me on this path, and then obviously
inspired you.
Inspired me and fast forward us to basically now getting here and being one of Nick Walker's soft tissue people.
Excellent. Yeah, and you can find more about Dr. Nisar's business and what he does at asylumspr.com and at the asylum sport clinic _ on Instagram. So, Dr. Nisar, what led you to establish Asylum SPR, and what does your background in sport performance, how does it influence your approach to treating bodybuilders versus other athletes?
So I was never under the intention of like I was going to do my own business anytime soon. I was hoping to work under a family practice located also in South Jersey, but very quickly I realized that, you know what, I want to practice a little bit differently than the traditional chiro. Most people's interpretation of what a traditional chiro is, I don't know if you've ever been yourself, but a lot of places it's just very like you get adjusted, you leave, and it's just that. And you're supposed to come back, whether it's next week, a couple of weeks, or every month, whatever it may be.
Yep.
And to me, that just wasn't the model that I wanted. And being an athlete ever since I was young and always being in the weight room since I was young, I had my first barbell and bench set in 6th grade. So I've always loved the sport of bodybuilding, and I've always loved the act of just working out. I did play sports, but I knew like sports wasn't going to be my thing long-term or career-wise. Coming from an immigrant household, it was doctor, engineer, lawyer, just one of those. But I will say I found my way into this because I do have a fascination with the human body and sports performance, and that kind of got me into this.
There's nothing more hands-on than chiropractic work. I've done a lot of ART, active release, and I found it very beneficial. But absolutely, it's like the model is basically you got to come in every week to stay on top of these things, or you're just going to get worse. I know you've combined a chiropractic background with a master's in applied clinical nutrition. How does this unique combination inform your approach to treating elite athletes?
I think with the masters in nutrition, I do get a interesting insight on understanding how bodybuilders like handle their nutrition, especially so up close with guys that are super high level, and you really get to like break down, wow, like this is what these guys do. And then you can then downtrend that to even the general population, because I have a good mix of both like high level athletes, amateur athletes, and general population. But watching the highest level, especially in a sport where nutrition is so important, you learn probably more there. I've learned more from those guys than I probably ever did in my master's. It just allowed me to bring the application together and make the dots connect. And that is what was really cool, because you went from learning from these guys that some of them don't really have higher level education, and just learning how to do this nutritional side of things, and because of their sport, and then connecting it to the education. And that's where I was able to put a lot of the things together, not so much from the actual schooling itself.
Sure. So my audience, a lot of my readers and listeners they want to get into the weeds with this stuff. All right. So let's talk about a couple of these different methods that I know that you specialize in. Let's talk first about like active rehabilitation. Okay. So what's an example of a movement through active rehabilitation that you might apply? Like walk us through it. Assume that we understand the gist of like contract, relax, proprioception, Golgi tendon organs, and all that muscle reflex stuff.
Sure. I mean, when we talk about active rehabilitation, it's essentially, why is it called that? Is because it's not passive, right? Passive is going to be something like stretching, doing a modality where the client or the athlete just lays there and isn't really doing anything. Whereas active, we're potentially going to actually be loading, right? Let's say somebody has hip rotational issues, and we need to actually load that because that's where they're actually having the problem. Just stretching it isn't going to do anything, but maybe doing a hip airplane or even doing some form of banded mobility movements is going to help us access more range of motion, because now we have load, we have stability, and we have proprioception being tested. And those are things that we want to work on, so that way when the athlete goes and actually performs, whether it's an exercise or a movement, or in whether it's the actual game, there is actual application and crossover, and not just somebody stretching them, if that makes sense.
It makes sense. So for bodybuilders and strength athletes specifically, how are you programming active rehabilitation? And I know most of your clients are not going to be like Nick Walker, right? Yeah. But how would what they do be different from what you do with somebody 270 plus pounds like Nick?
Sure. It just depends. Like right now, I'm actually working with one of the strongest guys in the world. And he had a recent injury, 2 severe injuries, a torn quad and a torn hamstring, while trying to break the world record in powerlifting.
Yeah.
And just the active side of that right now, we have to pull back very heavily from the actual loading of super heavy weights, because obviously the injury is very significant, and we have to kind of move over to a bodybuilding type training protocol to help rebuild the tears that happen in the intramuscular regions. Active rehabilitation, especially if we are going to talk about bodybuilders, I have to be very careful depending on where they are in season or off season, and how much you can actually change their routine. When you're like in prep, active rehabilitation is going to be very, very minimal. You're going to take more of a passive approach. But if you're in the off season, that's the best time to go ahead and do active rehabilitation because their recovery is really good. They're resting a lot, and there's quote unquote lesser risk for active rehabilitation and related injuries.
And what are you looking for improvement from them? Like, what's the pre versus post outcome you're aiming for? Like, just improve strength, range of motion?
All of that. So the first thing is always going to be range of motion because after injuries, that's the first thing that you're always going to lose for the most part. Range of motion has to be restored and it has to be almost entirely pain-free. A small bit I've gotten with experience, I've learned how to push into pain a little bit without making it detrimental, but almost full pain-free range of motion and then start the loading process. And a lot of the times it's going to be with isometrics because with bodybuilders, like our biggest risk is that we don't want to tear anything, especially off the bone, because at that point, you know how that could completely ruin an entire career. So that's the super safe level way of reintroducing rehabilitation for bodybuilders. I love my isometrics and just making sure tendon health is good. And then from there, loading through full range of motion.
Yep. Okay. And I know, so besides active rehabilitation, you also specialize at your facility in cryotherapy and cold modalities, infrared sauna, passive modalities. Now, so you offer all of these for a serious bodybuilder and strength athlete. Like, what's your process for deciding which to use?
It all depends on what the person is coming in for, obviously. And depend like for bodybuilders, you know that like weight is going to be a thing, especially now with the weight caps. Sometimes we can use the sauna to manipulate water, especially towards the end of a prep when you have to make those potentially drastic changes. But I will say that using it throughout the entire prep, and we use infrared ones because they're not overly aggressive. We can control the intensity of the heat and then have the athlete be completely adapted to it so that by the time we are going to hit them a little bit more aggressively towards the end of prep to make weight, if that is necessary, it's not a hard adjustment for them. Now, for the power lifter or strength athlete, you got to be a little careful because you could fatigue the central nervous system a little bit too much. So we'll regulate the intensity of the heat and make sure that the athlete has been accommodated to it all throughout their prep or whatever it may be, if it's a training block going into the competition. So that way it's not just a random spike of stress for them right before a comp, how a lot of guys try to knock out all these modalities right before the comp and their bodies are not used to it.
Yeah, it sounds like you have to be in such deep communication with your guys. I mean, you need to know where they are in their training. You know, you need to know what they're doing and how they are pain-wise too. So let's talk. The things that I wanted to really drill into a couple of the different modalities that you offer. So cryotherapy and cold modalities, infrared sauna, passive modalities, and we'll talk too about your work with Nick and elite athletes. So with cryotherapy, like, let's talk a little bit about it. What's the minimum effective dose for it? How do you assess it's working? And what are you looking for there?
So for the cryotherapy, we use a localized cryotherapy, and that's going to be typically for very acute injuries where we've seen our best and biggest responses. Most of the stuff is falling within a 2 to 5 minute range, and in the 5 minute is a little extensive, so we do have to lay off of it or have a larger distance between our cryo. But 2 to 5 is where we find a lot of the sweet spots. It's usually more towards that too, and it's typically going to be more associated towards our acute injuries. The cold plunge that we use a little bit more so for chronic issues, inflammatory joint issues, or even overall fatigue. That's where we're going to use the cold plunge because the submersion of the entire body, and we can attack it from that angle. The infrared sauna we use for people who also have very similar issues that can't tolerate the cold. So that can help with inflammatory arthritis. That can help with people with Lyme's disease. It's very unique in that sense. And it can also be very, very helpful for people that may have cardiovascular issues because it's almost a light form of cardiovascular conditioning due to adapting to that heat and your heart rate going up and down.
Great. So is the major difference between cryotherapy and cold modalities like cold plunges just the degree of cold that you're dealing with? I know, like, you're probably talking about like liquid nitrogen, that kind of thing. Is that
Yeah.
what cryotherapy is? It is, actually.
Yeah, so cryo is liquid nitrogen. And the thing about cryo is that for people who can't handle full body submersion, it's very localized. You can attack a specific area. So it's in cases where systemic inflammation is not the concern. We can go very specific to that area, whatever it may be. And it's almost always with traumatic and acute injuries. That's where it makes the most sense. Whereas for the cold plunges and the cold water, that's for systemic inflammation and any form of inflammatory diseases.
Nice. All right. So let's talk about infrared sauna. Like, how does infrared sauna work?
So the infrared sauna, the research behind it is more towards the wavelength of the light, right? That's why the whole infrared is such a big deal. The research shows that it can penetrate on a more microscopic level, whether it's helping the cells or the skin. Now, as to how far true that is, obviously it's very hard to prove. There is research out there that it's getting a little bit better. It's not too phenomenal, But I will say research for saunas has been around for years, and that's the implementation that I really like for people, is that it is very, very beneficial for circulation. It's very beneficial for heart health. And those are the things that we want to focus on. And with these bodybuilders, the biggest thing is that we're using it to help decrease cortisol levels, to remove stress, have them just be very, very calm and relaxed during these preps. So that way they're not holding on to unnecessary water, stress, fatigue, whatever it may be.
That actually sounds like a really good plan. Like I've never thought about that. So you're using it around the competition probably? Like, do you use it like pre and post like show?
So we actually use it. So a lot of the guys, the pro level guys, the bodybuilders that we work with, is typically 1 to 2 times a week when we're in prep. So they're here almost twice a week. We split that up based off recovery days and training days, or post recovery from their hardest training day. So that way we can compile that damage as close as possible together. And that's when we hit them as hard as we can with all of these passive modalities, because we don't want to hit them all year long during the off season, because they develop tolerances to it, especially when they're so large. And we want to hit them with these passive modalities very acutely and very sharply when they need it the most. And that's going to be during the preps when these aches and pains pop up. So we hit them with the saunas almost 2 to 3 times a week, depending on how well they tolerate it. And we regulate it very well. So we know exactly the infrared ones. What's cool about them, you can measure things. You can see what the exact temperature was when they got in, how much time they were in, what the intensity of the wavelength was. So that's why I like the infrared ones for me, because there's trackability to it. And we can make sure that we're not hitting them with anything too crazy before going into a show. Because I've seen guys jump into a sauna that's super aggressive and then not be able to bounce back and peak properly.
Makes sense. So you talked a lot about passive modalities, and I just want to make sure the audience understands what we're talking about here. So what are the passive modalities?
So the passive modalities are going to be like the manual therapy, stretching, but also the electrical stimulation type of machines that everyone has seen. Everyone's got different variations. We have a pretty high level one. Everyone's got a different one. People, have you ever seen like the newbie? Ours is called the ARP Wave, but there's also regular E-Stim. But those are passive modalities that are supposed to help with like regeneration to a certain extent, with especially acute injuries. So when guys tweak something, we want to be able to apply that and hopefully see the response that we're looking for. Even infrared saunas and the plunges and cryo all fall under passive modalities. Everything that's not the athlete actually actively loading or moving on their own is considered basically a passive modality. You can even have ultrasound, shockwave; those things will fall under that too.
Interesting. So how do you combine all of these recovery modalities, and what sequence yields the best performance outcomes? Is there even a general rule, or does it depend on the athlete?
A great question. I have, obviously, certain people have their routines, have a set way of doing things. We have tried things a little differently, but we see what works the best for the athletes. For me, as a chiropractor, I do use spinal manipulation and decompression. I don't market that heavily. That's just a part of the appointment. I don't, you know what I mean? I don't believe in the whole, let me charge you this much money for just doing a quick 20-second adjustment. It's not what I stand for. That's the very beginning of our appointment, just so we can get like a little bit more joint mobility and start working on the athlete. From there, we transition to the manual therapy. We spend anywhere between 40 to 60 minutes doing manual therapy. And if there's passive modalities in there, whether we need to use the stimulation machine, things like ultrasound or cryotherapy could be used in that time frame. Once that's all done, we usually end our sessions with either the plunge and the sauna or just the sauna. But the sauna really helps like relieve the athlete in terms of being stressed out or potentially even feeling slightly irritated from all the work. So they'll just go relax in the sauna. Some guys fall asleep.
That's a good sign. There's no better sign than that. If you can get them to do that on show day, a contest day, that's the best thing to do.
It's awesome. Some of them will drop like 4 or 5 pounds between when they walk to the front door.
I actually believe it. I believe it. It's just wild to think about. That's like, that might be a small percentage for Nick, but that's still like, that's substantial weight, you know?
For sure. We've started
stress.
recording it a lot more. That's exactly. It's the stress that's like leaving their body, but obviously they're going to sweat water and float water too in the time that they're here.
Sure. All right, so your work with Nick Walker has gotten attention. What unique challenges come with treating a mass monster at his level compared to other bodybuilders, strength guys?
So it's not as much anymore, but I think Nick was my like breakthrough in like not being so nervous anymore. Where obviously when you make that gap of like working with amateurs and working with athletes that aren't considered, I don't want to sound like that, but aren't considered high value yet. You know, because at the amateur level, no one really has a value just yet. But when you're working with somebody who everybody is looking at, and then their health is in your hand to a certain extent, if he gets hurt, it could be massively my fault. Especially after he had that injury, I actually worked on him like pretty closely after the hamstring injury and monitored it slightly, a good amount. And it made me very, very nervous, especially following an injury. I was like, man, if I mess this up, there's a lot
Yeah,
of
it just
pressure.
means you care. Honestly, that just means you care. So has your treatment approach evolved based on what you've learned working with Nick and with elite bodybuilders and strength athletes? What key principles have you refined?
For sure. And that's exactly what it is refining of the quality of work and understanding how much detail has to go into this and removing a lot of stuff. Like kind of earlier where you asked like how do you like use all those modalities? I actually started pulling things away, which I
Yeah.
realized like going back to like the very, very basics and understanding what like really works for this athlete and what they need. A lot of times is really just what they think that they need is what you should probably give them because it plays such a large mental aspect for them, and you don't want to mess these guys up from their routine because their routine is so important, especially at that level. Like they don't budge, they don't skip a beat. For Nick, one of the coolest things is we'd be working on a session, we'd be almost like an hour deep into a session. His timer would go off. They'd be mid-session. I would be working maybe on his back or something. Timer would go off. He would sit up, walk over to the chair, sit down, start eating his meal,
Oh
and
yeah.
would say a word. And then as soon as he'd be done, he'd be right back on the table.
It's the most important aspect. It's the hardest one too, the diet.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so for listeners who train hard but aren't competing, what service at Asylum would give them the biggest performance improvement for their investment?
I think it would be really information. And that's where a lot of people don't realize like what people get out of here. Like the general population, when they walk through these doors and the amount of like attention and information and care that they get, not even from a hands-on standpoint, that's what's lacking so much is actual good information. Because a lot of times I don't have the answer, but I can refer you to the right direction. And I think that has given me a lot more credibility than my hands-on work ever has. Even though, like, yes, you can come in, you can get your service. I do practice manual therapy really heavily. I work with a lot of like professional athletes, especially in the bodybuilding world. So they would get a high level service in terms of that. But I want people to know is that what they would get when they walk through these doors is a community of people that has a lot of information and direction to give.
Okay, are there any new treatment modalities or approaches you're looking forward to implementing at Asylum in the near future? Anything in the pipeline, tech-wise, anything like that?
I would definitely like to potentially get into hyperbaric and the oxygen, and or grade 4 lasers, both which are extremely, extremely expensive.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
interesting stuff. I know a little bit about the first topic, but the laser
yeah,
stuff, no, that sounds pretty out there. That's pretty interesting, though. I mean, you got to keep on the edge with this stuff because there's a lot of this stuff has benefit. Like the infrared to me was totally novel. I had to look into it, and basically
yeah,
everything you said corresponded with my research too.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's super interesting, and it works. So
It's not.
so for our listeners who might be interested in working with you, what's the best way for them to connect with Asylum SPR?
So honestly, just our Instagram is probably the easiest, most direct way. People do contact me through email. That's another way that people can contact me at dr.umarnisar at asylumspr.com. And then obviously you already said our Instagram, but that's going to be probably the two best ways to get to me. And then on our website has my direct phone number, so people could easily just call me.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Nisar, for being here today. We
Yeah,
learned a lot, and thank you for your time. All right. Have a
of
good
course.
one.
I appreciate it, man. You too. Thank
All
you.
right. Listen up, all you enhanced fucks. The MesoRx forum at thinksteroids.com is your go-to source for everything enhanced. We're not just another board. We're the most trusted harm reduction community in the game. You should be looking only at unfiltered reviews where members don't bullshit. At Meso, they definitely tell it like it is. Don't waste time with shills. Visit thinksteroids.com/community and stop posting now. In this second section of Gear Growth and Gains, episode 18, I'm kicking off a new hybrid written article and audio podcast series, culminating in an ebook focusing on advanced biomarkers, how to understand and use them to optimize your hormone profiles, boost performance, and safeguard your health. This episode serves as an introduction to crucial topic for any serious athletes or enhanced bodybuilders, reading and interpreting your blood work. Blood work is the cornerstone of any scientifically sound hormone optimization protocol. Without it, you're essentially flying blind, relying on subjective feelings rather than objective data. The problem is many athletes get blood test results back and see a bunch of numbers and reference ranges, but don't know how to make sense of them. Or even worse, they just jump around and get different biomarkers without knowing how to use them. That's where this series comes in. The guide I'm referencing today, which you can read in full at Type-IIx.substack.com, is from my article titled How to Read Blood Work for Hormone Optimization, an Athlete's Guide. Key Advanced Biomarkers for Enhanced Lifters. Breaks down the critical biomarkers you need to know, how to prepare for testing, and how to interpret your results in a way that supports both performance and long-term health. Here are some of that article's key takeaways. First, comprehensive testing matters. Monitor total and free testosterone, estradiol, the sensitive or ultra-sensitive assays only, IGF-1, lipids, liver markers, and inflammation indicators at least every 6 months. Second, timing is everything. Respect compound-specific washout periods, ranges from 2 days to 84 days, before testing to avoid false readings. Third and fourth, track trends, not snapshots. Maintain 18 plus months of chronological blood work data to identify meaningful patterns and hormone relationships. And finally, optimize ratios over individual values. Focus on testosterone to estradiol balance and marker interaction rather than maximizing single hormones. If you'd like my help with this, you can visit amplitude.com/protocols for my professional, custom, and individualized protocol designed for you, with continuous blood work monitoring of relevant biomarkers. So hormone optimization isn't just about hitting normal lab ranges. Those ranges are statistical averages based on general populations, often sedentary individuals, and don't necessarily reflect what's optimal for an athlete pushing their limits. Instead, optimization is about finding your individual hormone balance that supports muscle growth, recovery, metabolic efficiency, and overall performance. Key hormones to monitor include total and free testosterone, estradiol measured with the sensitive assays and ultrasensitive, and IGF-1, which is a marker for growth hormone activity. But it doesn't stop there. Cardiovascular risk markers like LDL and HDL, apolipoprotein ratios, and inflammatory markers such as C-reactive protein are essential to track as well. Liver and kidney function tests, including gamma-glutamyl transferase, that's GGT, help ensure your organs are handling the stress of training and any compounds you might be using. One of the most important points in the guide is respecting washout periods before testing. Different compounds clear your system at different rates, from a couple days for some oral steroids to nearly 3 months for long-acting testosterone esters. Testing too soon after a cycle of protocol change can give you misleading results, which could lead to poor decisions about your health and dosing. Another critical concept is longitudinal tracking. One-off tests are snapshots. They don't tell the full story. This guide recommends maintaining at least 18 months of chronological blood work data. This allows you to identify meaningful trends and patterns, such as how your testosterone to estradiol ratio shifts with training, diet, or protocol adjustments. It's these trends, not isolated numbers, that provide actionable insights. This guide also emphasizes a systems approach. Instead of obsessing over individual values, it's about understanding how biomarkers interact. For example, changes in SHBG can affect free testosterone bioavailability, even if total testosterone looks normal. Similarly, balancing estradiol with testosterone is crucial to avoid side effects like gynecomastia or cardiovascular risks. For athletes using enhanced protocols, regular monitoring every 6 months at least during maintenance phases is essential, with more frequent testing when adjusting dosages. Annual heart scans and liver and kidney imaging are recommended to catch any early signs of complications. If you're navigating complex biomarker interactions or seeing unexpected results, professional consultation is invaluable. Specialists can help tailor your protocols and interpret subtle patterns that might otherwise be missed. In summary, this guide is a must-read for anyone serious about hormone optimization. It provides a comprehensive guidework for using blood work as a dynamic feedback system, guiding your decisions to maximize gains while protecting your long-term health. To dive deeper into all these topics and get the full details, visit Type-IIx.substack.com. It's packed with actionable insights to help you take control of your hormone optimization journey. That's it for today's introduction to the Advanced Biomarker series. Stay tuned for upcoming episodes where we'll break down individual biomarkers, testing strategies, and protocol adjustments in more detail. Hey guys, I don't know what you're doing for your blood work, but if you're using anyone besides Fit-IIx, you're lighting money on fire and probably not getting the right biomarkers to boot. This is especially true if LabCorp's within driving distance to you, because they're literally 1/3 the price of the competition. Use coupon code Type-IIx, that's TYPE-IIX. It's not case sensitive. You'll save 10%. If all you have nearby is Quest, they're still the best option, because while there's like one cheaper company, they don't offer as many biomarkers and they end up not being worth it. So sign up for the Research Labs Insider at fitomix.org. That's FITOMICS.org for by far the best lab work options available in the U.S., except for New York, New Jersey, and Rhode Island, where self-requisition and blood work isn't legal, at least not yet. If you're confused at all, the best thing to do is visit my site at amplitude.com, click sign up for Type-IIx's newsletter, sign up, and when I send out my occasional, valuable, never spam newsletter, I include the steps to sign up and use Fitomix.